Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, what is it? Are you feeling warm? Or are you feeling sweaty? It's not the weather. It's Frank Vogel's seat because it's hot. He's on the hot seat, Andy. I don't mean his butt. I mean the seat that he's sitting on.
I'm still wondering how I'm sitting in Frank Vogel's seat.
It doesn't matter. Point is, he might get fired. All of that and more coming up on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We have this thing up for you as early as we possibly can. Get it up even earlier on non-game days, especially on the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel. Try to make another Locked On podcast your second listen of the day. Want to let you know as well, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All right, Andy. So there is so much to talk about today, to the point where there's some interesting trade deadline nuggets and rumors and whatever around Jeremy Grant and Miles Turner got hurt and all kinds. I don't know if we're going to get to it.
Yeah,
because the news this morning on that came out on Tuesday morning after the Lakers have a big win, arguably their biggest and best win of the season, Monday over the Utah Jazz, was that another loss like the ones that the Lakers had could have cost Frank Vogel his job. He is essentially, according to Sam Amick and Bill Oram at The Athletic and confirmed by others, Mark Stein, for example, Frank Vogel is essentially coaching for his job now every game.
Yeah, he's like the equivalent right now, Brian. Like, you know how when you move either to a new house or a new apartment and you're renting, it's usually like a standard lease, and then from there it goes month to month. That's basically Frank Vogel right now. Like, his lease ran up, the original one, and now he's just sort of on a game-to-game equivalent of the month-to-month section.
He's on a Stanley Johnson-esque 10-day contract.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at it that way, but
he's basically now the new Stanley Johnson. And so
no wonder he's playing him so much. He sees a lot of himself in Stanley Johnson. Like, they're kindred spirits.
He's going to need somewhere to stay after he
Well,
gets fired.
You know what? You really think about this, play this out even further, because, I mean, one of the there are a lot of different reactions I had to this, and a lot of things to peel back the layers of the onion. But one of them was just, this is not shocking. This is something that has been reported before. It's something that everybody has sensed, going back to Frank Vogel getting the fake 1-year extension, which is basically taking him into next season as a lame duck, as opposed to allowing him to be a lame duck.
It's not even the Lakers didn't even punt on that decision. They just sort of squib kicked.
Right.
They just casually rolled the ball slightly up the field a little bit.
But it got me thinking, though, just now, he is playing his fellow 10-dayer Stanley Johnson a lot of minutes and has played him a lot since Stanley joined, in part because I think Stanley's acquitted himself well, but obviously, they are spirit animals. You know who else Frank Vogel loves? Absolutely loves. Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley was somebody who spent a lot of this year on a non-guaranteed deal. Another guy that is just sort of, simpatico.
That's right.
I mean, they're all going to get matching tats.
So, okay, here are the things that I know between the two of us that we would like to talk about. Whether or not this is a good move for the Lakers, why they think they need to do it, whether or not they're handling it correctly, the timing of these reports in terms of in the wake of Magic Johnson's tweet and in the wake of an actual huge win, to have this appear the next day, I don't think is accidental. There's the question of who might replace Frank Vogel. And I got a hypothetical that comes from the article in The Athletic that I got to run by you, because they just can't possibly be this stupid. But then also too, there's larger question of what this whole conversation means about the team. Not even, it's a good thing, a bad thing, fair or unfair. Like we've talked about a lot. Fair and unfair is not always really part of this equation, nor necessarily should it be. But the Lakers can't ignore fair and unfair in terms of how it reflects on the entire organization. So let's start at the beginning, I guess. Because I texted you, you're right, that you weren't surprised. I texted you before the game. I was like, wonder what happens if they lose again like they did against Denver.
Yeah.
And you knew what I was talking about. Is this...
I mean, in that report from Sam and Bill, it laid out that had they lost to Utah badly,
in the same way, he probably would have been fired.
Yes. So he is definitely hanging on to this gig by his fingernails.
He's the cat in the poster.
Yeah.
hang in there, baby. Is this the right approach for the Lakers, getting away from process and just talking about the idea of making a coaching change? Is a coaching change, because I realize it's hard to divorce process. I got a lot of questions about process, but is making a coaching change the right thing for the Lakers to be doing or considering right now to try to fix what ails them?
It depends on the reason. I mean, there is a, I guess, devil's advocate, somewhat grounded in reason argument you could make for firing Frank Vogel. And this is actually something I've brought up a few times over the course of this season, while making it clear I was not being a proponent of firing Frank Vogel. I am not advocating that Vogel should be fired for any reason or this one. But if you're looking for one that could make sense, and this was actually something that came up in the report from Sam and Bill, it's the idea of whether or not Frank Vogel still has the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's apparently something that is being evaluated right now. Because in terms of the inconsistent effort and execution and focus by this team, if you were looking for a reason to fire him, like the idea that for whatever reason, through no fault of his own, could be a matter of a different, very new set of ears this season not responding to him well, them not liking the schemes, them sensing this dude isn't along for the ride long anyway, so why bother?
Why would they think that, though?
You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever it is, if they feel like Frank Vogel doesn't have the locker room and they still feel like this season is worth saving and actually savable, then you could make a rational argument that you need another voice in there trying to lead them. Again, all the reasons for this potentially having happened matter, but the bottom line is it will have been what happened, and you have to do something about it. And so that's one argument that, again, I have brought up before and wondered in terms of Vogel and this team. I don't know if that is what's happening, but that would be, I guess, a somewhat sensible argument.
To the extent that these guys are sort of aware and respond to these sorts of questions, like, hey, we're about to get our coach fired. And, this is something I want to get into with much more depth in terms of LeBron, in terms of Pelinka, in terms of the look of for the organization, is just that, they're not stupid. They know what is coming. Like, they could see, all right, well, we might be getting our guy fired. And they came out with a much better effort on both sides of the ball on Monday than they certainly did in any of the, the Denver, Memphis game, whatever it might be. I don't know if that points to something more about the players or more about Vogel, because I guess if they wanted Vogel to go, they could just tank 2 more games and he'd be fired, and then they could suddenly crank it back up, say all the stuff, and then go crank it back up. But if they don't, and they can sort of run hot and cold in the way that they do, I don't know if this is a group where the coach is going to be the voice that gets them going in terms of having the locker room. You know what I'm saying? Like, with a younger group, with a group that needs more motivation or whatever it might be, I think that's something that you can look at a bit more. But losing the locker room with a veteran crew like this is a different deal. Because, look around who's playing hard. Malik Monk is a young player, is playing hard. Reeves playing hard. Like, they make mistakes, they have limitations, but this is fundamentally about the big three, and then just not having the same lineup to be able to play more than 2 nights in a row. So I don't think that this would solve their problem, The only thing is, though, it's one of the only levers that they have available to pull. So, even if you're like, I feel bad for Frank, I don't know if this is going to do it, but we have two things. We got the trade deadline and we've got fire Frank Vogel. We probably have to use both of them, but this is the one that's available to us now. The question I have for you is one that's always asked, or should be always asked whenever you're going to make a coaching change, is do you have a better option available? And to that extent, I think we could look at the coaching staff that's there, although some of the reporting indicates that the entire staff might have been in jeopardy. Let me ask you that question, though, about potential replacements and where the Lakers would go from here and whether or not that would make a difference. We'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Okay, Laker fans, you've been hearing me talk about Prize Picks for months. Have you signed up yet? If not, why? Because fantasy made easy daily. That is Prize Picks. So you haven't checked it out yet, you are missing out. You're going to love this app for NBA, mixed sports pick'ems. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer all the superstar players as well as bench players. You can even go deep down a roster in Prize Picks. This is really fun. They offer mixed sport entries. You could take the over on Russell Westbrook points combined with the under on, say, well, this would have been useful last week, and Kyler Murray completions. Just, I'm a
believe it's time to update the copy, Prize Picks.
No, that just popped. That's not the copy. That just popped into my head because I watched that game, and as a Cardinal fan, it hurt, Brian. But use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks, it's safe. They offer fast withdrawals. So go to prizepicks.com today and use the promo code NBA, or go to the App Store, download the app. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. If you're not playing Prize Picks, honestly, you have no idea what you're missing.
My favorite part of this story in The Athletic from Bill Oram and Sam Amick, who are two excellent reporters, and all of this stuff about Frank Vogel and job security and stuff has been percolating for a little while, but it's been, the report is out there now and, confirmed by people like Mark Stein and others around the NBA. The coaching staff, this from the article, I'm just going to read it. The coaching staff has been well aware that it faced significant pressure for months. Sources say that it was made clear to the staff early on by Kurt Rambis, the former Laker and current director of basketball affairs. The hell kind of title is that? Who has been one of the most influential members of the organization since returning to the franchise in 2017. Yet not long after Rambis relayed the word that they were all at risk of being replaced if things did not improve, COVID complications made it nearly impossible for the Lakers to continue evaluating Vogel because, among other reasons, he wasn't there. Vogel entered the health and safety protocols on December 19th and didn't return until December 31st. We all saw what happened with David Fizdale. Again, totally messed up, janky, beat up roster. He went 1-5, didn't cover himself in glory. At the very least, didn't show that, look, guys, it's a different deal. They play harder for me, whatever. So 2 questions. First question is, if they do can Vogel, is the point really to replace him with somebody that's better? And if so, who would that be? Or is it just to change the thing and kind of light a fire under the group? Second question, do you think that it is even possible that they are stupid enough to allow Kurt Rambis to be installed as the interim head coach while they figure all this out? They can't possibly be that dumb because they don't want that beautiful new facility in El Segundo to be burned to the ground. Please answer these questions in either order that you would prefer.
As far as the who would replace Frank Vogel, there's nobody, and I was thinking about this a little bit, that struck me as immediately available and imminently better than Frank Vogel. It seems like much more of a light a fire under these guys, right. Try to create a sense of urgency, and
which basically is an acceptable reason, right? But that is a different reason,
and just placehold until you find the guy that you want in the offseason. I'm not saying it's impossible to find somebody who ends up permanent in this type of setting and this type of scenario, but it's much more difficult to do it. As far as the second question, do I think it is even a little bit possible that they could perhaps bring down former multiple-time head coach Kurt Rambis and give him the reins?
Former multiple failed head coach Kurt Rambis.
Do I think that is possible? Absolutely, I think it is possible, Brian. Do I think it is probable? No, I don't think it is probable. Do I think there is an absolute 0% chance of this happening, Brian? No, I absolutely do not think it is a 0% chance of that happening. I mean, the idea that whoever would be involved with this, I guess, unless this particular information was leaked from, the team Vogel side, the coaching side of this,
to try to maybe gin up sympathy for Frank.
Exactly. This got out because the organization wanted you to know this. And any organization that is lacking so much self-awareness that they would even want you to know, that's the same type of organization that maybe would bring down Kurt Rambis to finish this thing out.
Yeah, because I agree with you. I do think this came from the Lakers side. It is very unvogely to start leaking this sort of information from. And now Frank Vogel was adamant before the game in terms of defending himself, defending his coaching staff, and has done that a few times over the course of the season. Talked about the work that they're done. This was not the first time that they've done it. He is not above sticking up for himself and all that kind of stuff. It is certainly possible this came from his side. But that said, I do tend to think it's much more like from the organization side and in response to Magic, in response to angry Laker fans, like, hey, you know what? And don't. It could have come from LeBron's side. I mean, like the team LeBron. But the idea being that, like, we're the Lakers, we're holding people accountable. This is unacceptable to us. Like, don't think that just because you win one game, Frank Vogel, you're off the hook. I agree with you. I don't think that Kurt Rambis is going to be the interim head coach if they do pull the trigger on this. I am appalled at the idea that I can't just be like, Andy, that's ridiculous. There is a 0% chance. The idea that there isn't a 0% chance, that I can't just summarily shoot that scenario down, and that I can't even limit it. It is a cone of shame situation. I should be able to shoot that down, or basically say it's a 1% chance. I would probably put it at like 10%. Like, I feel like there might be a 10% chance that they would let Kurt do this.
Well, like
if they would talk themselves into Kurt being a good bridge, Andy, until they can find somebody else. Because Fizz, it didn't quite work.
Phil Handy's never done it before. Mike Penberthy's never done it before. A lot of dudes, a lot of folks. Yeah, that's how you end up with half of the Rambi swooping down.
Okay, let's do this and then we'll break.
I'm just excited. We haven't heard from the Rambi in a while. We haven't.
You want to talk? Look, bad.
Heard about the Rambi in a while.
Bad for the Lakers. Good for content. I mean, like, the day they named Kurt Rambis the interim head coach, we are going to do bonkers numbers on the show. I mean, the YouTube views, the podcast downloads, they're going to go through the roof. So, self-interested, I say Kurt with Linda as lead assistant. But
by the way, related note, you know who doesn't like us? The Rambi.
We've heard that. Let me ask you this, because I do think this is actually a fair question, and we haven't gotten to it. And both of us, I think, are reasonably empathetic to Frank's situation. Yeah. Both of us think he's done a pretty good job over the course of his tenure as a Laker head coach. I think I am probably a little bit more supportive of him than you are. But overall,
I think Vogel has done a few things throughout the course of this season, recurring few things that have made his life as a coach more difficult.
Yeah, this is the question I was asking you. How much blame do you think he deserves for where they are right now?
I mean, I think he deserves, if we were to whip out the blame pie that we invented and ESPN went on to steal right from under us.
Sons of bitches.
I think
they have enough?
I think his slice would be big enough that it would at least feel like a quality appetizer. But if you go down the line of the things that really caused the havoc of this season, some of which, by the way, are completely out of the organization's control on top of it. Like, they can't control elements of injury. They certainly can't control guys being in and out of the COVID protocols.
I understand. My understanding is that COVID was created in a lab in El Segundo.
Yes. by the league that does not want the Lakers to succeed. Right. But, I mean, there are elements of this that are out of the organization's control altogether. But in terms of things that are controllable, I don't think Frank Vogel is at the top of the list. I think he is on the list. But again, like we talked about before, like unless it is something like really that comes down to just guys are tuning him out consistently. And if you have any hopes at all for salvaging this season, you have to make some type of change. And you don't think that change is going to happen for whatever reason with Vogel there. No, I don't think Vogel has done enough this season to merit firing. I have been exasperated at times that he just hasn't done certain things that I think would make his life easier.
I think, I agree. I mean, I think was slower with certain adjustments in terms of the smaller lineup than I would have liked. He was playing, Avery Bradley, who has redeemed that choice a little bit as the year went along, but it was certainly earlier in the season. It wasn't good. Some of the playing big with DeAndre was circumstance related in terms of who they had available.
It was also what he wanted to do too.
It's also right, but it's also what he wanted to do. He wanted to try that first at the very least. And is the offense as creative as you like? No, but like the Westbrook trade, the resulting players that they picked up, the roster that they put together, and then all that. I don't think he is. I agree with you at the top of the list, and I probably might even put him further down than you would. You said something though at the beginning of the show that I thought was interesting in terms of about what this looks like, and being able to go out and get the best coaches for your organization. On the one hand, the Lakers are the Lakers. On the other hand, firing Frank Vogel, particularly if they fire him after this stupid double secret probation story that's out there now, the idea that he's being coached game to game and all that kind of stuff, or evaluated game to game. What does that do in terms of the organization's credibility for finding really good head coaches, particularly in the wake of the Ty Lue thing,
the Monty Williams thing,
not being willing to offer these guys, not giving Frank Vogel a credible extension after he wins a title? Because these are very important questions. And then there's also the LeBron factor in this as well. Is there a tie-in between the Lakers playing as hard as they did and as decisively and as attentively as they did and LeBron? Because firing Frank Vogel after the Westbrook trade is a bad look for him too. We'll talk about all of those things next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. It's the new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit, eating healthier, make Built Bar part of that plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar, dare I say. And if you want to eat healthy, but keep it from feeling boring so you don't give up after a few weeks and say, screw it, man, I'm just going to be unhealthy and let the chips fall where they may, Built Bars are your solution. They are covered in 100% chocolate. Most of them only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. That's the good stuff. And there are so many great flavors to choose from. You got coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, mint brownie, raspberry, just down the line. They're all great. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCKED15, 15% off at built.com.
Frank Vogel get himself some Built Bars to get into, get some protein and help work off all that energy he's going to have and anger he's going to have after the Lakers can him. So you want to go to the gym and get yoked. Get some Built Bars. And imagine Frank Vogel emerging in like a year and he's just this hulking Adonis.
You know what he's going to do? He's going to get signed by some team and go out and beat the Lakers. He's going to drop 75 on the Lakers as a 10-day guy playing alongside Stanley Johnson.
That's right. All right, so let's do the organization first, because I part of the reason I think the organization has been reluctant to fire Frank Vogel to this point is that they understand to can him after the start that they've had, given the injuries, given the roster turnover, and given the incredible disruption of the Russell Westbrook trade, which most GMs and most basketball people that were quoted about this stuff, anonymous or whatever, were like,
and wait, because this is important too, before you get to what I know you're going to say, most Laker fans,
yes,
as well.
They all kind of went, like, is this really what y'all need to be doing? Like, is this the best use of your assets and money and all that stuff? So a lot of people, it's not like they couldn't see this coming. And it's not even like last year where the Lakers ended disastrously, but were pretty good, whatever it was, 21-6 before the wheels fell off with injuries and all that. This year, they've been bad from the beginning. it is a bad look for the Lakers to then fire Frank Vogel, particularly after they would give him an extension. I think that's part of the reason that they have that they have held off. And then Jeannie Buss, like a month ago, was like, we're not going to evaluate Frank until we have everybody back. Well, Anthony Davis is hurt and, is going to be out for a little while. So like to turn around in a month and fire him also is a bad look. How much do you think this hurts the credibility of the organization, particularly in the wake of the process that brought Vogel in to begin with, then the extension, and now this, in terms of luring the best available guys to this gig?
Well, okay. This leads to a big overarching thought that I've had about this organization for like a decade. And it's something that I've brought up a lot. I've brought it up a lot on this show. Before getting to that really quickly, I just think it's worth noting that as much as Jeannie said that about they're not making any evaluations on Frank Vogel till we're all whole, Jeannie Buss spent Luke Walton's entire last season on the record saying that she loved Luke. She stood by Luke as a coach, but then also emphasizing this was Magic and Rob's call. So
she didn't do that though this time,
right,
and they did wait till the end of the year.
But the point being, though, I just don't know how much what Jeannie says really matters in this in terms of being a predictive indicator. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
I don't know if it really matters. I think this is indicative of an organization that just has no idea what it wants in a coach, hasn't for a while. I don't even know how much they actually think about it, how much they think it even matters. But in barely over a decade, they have gone from Mike Brown to Mike D'Antoni to Byron Scott to Luke Walton to clearly wanting Jason Kidd, but being afraid of those optics, to Frank Vogel as their third choice at best, to TBD, let's see what happens. The only commonality, Brian, between those men is there is no commonality. Like there is no through line from those guys.
They are men.
Yes.
Sexist bastards over there.
Yeah. I mean, they
so much misogyny.
They are all men who enjoy basketball. Like, I mean, that's really it. Like there's no common ethos between those guys. And, I was thinking about this today, like in terms of the organization's approach to coaches, which has been so all over the place. And, even with, say, somebody like Ty Lue, that, I think is a very good coach and has proven himself under a lot of adversity with the Clippers, to say nothing of the title he won with the Cavaliers. I think he's a very, very good coach. You could say that they pinpointed him and he went elsewhere, but he went elsewhere because they didn't offer him a legit contract that he would have said yes to.
Correct.
And like the downside, Brian, and this, I had never thought about this before, but to having somebody like Phil Jackson for so long as your coach is it removes any impetus towards introspection or examining a coach to begin with, because why bother with that when you have Phil Jackson or Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant for that matter? You know what I mean? Like they spent a long time never having to really think about what they would want from a coach who is not like an iconic, arguably the greatest coach of all time. And, for a little while, they had Pat Riley, who was holding that title too. So they're an organization that in certain ways has not really had to give this much thought. And there are a lot of different reasons that this could be happening right now, but it's just, I wonder if in some ways that's kind of the backhanded effect of having Phil.
It's an interesting point, and I think you combine that with the idea, a lack of direction with, I don't think Rob Pelinka thinks coaches are that important.
Clearly not.
I think in an analytics-based world, in a database world, or in a world where, Rob thinks, that roster construction and all that stuff are more important. And to be, there are politics here too, with your stars and this and that, whatever. And
it's a talent-driven league.
Right. Stars matter more than coaches. Ideally, you have both. You're Miami, you have Eric Spoelstra, and you have, Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler and and great structure and all that kind of stuff. But I do think fundamentally, if Rob Pelinka thought that Frank Vogel was important, he would have given him longer than a year, unless LeBron doesn't think he's that important or kind of wanted him out or whatever it is, in which case, okay, now we have something else to talk about. But, are you trying to line up Frank Vogel with your LeBron and AD and all these? So that's too cute by half. You're the frickin' Lakers. You can afford to pay LeBron James's salary, or I'm sorry, Frank Vogel's salary for another year or two. If you have to fire him, it's like, don't play games like that because of the long-term impact of what it means for the organization. So I think there's a de-emphasizing of the importance of coaching unless you can get one of those just absolutely ironclad rock star made guys. And those really aren't out there. So that to me is a big part of this. And then I think the LeBron aspect of it is an interesting one because how much influence does he have over this process? I don't think he wants to get Frank Vogel fired. I think he could get Frank Vogel fired if he wanted to. And not in that like LeBron doesn't want his fingerprints on it, that kind of way. Like it wouldn't be that hard, given the way things are going. And I think the way they played on Monday indicates that LeBron feels some responsibility, but also too, Andy, I think he understands, just like Pelinka understands it's a bad look. It'd be a bad look for LeBron because everybody knows LeBron had a lot to do with Russell Westbrook coming to this team to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to be like LeBron, who has, I think, a pretty reasonable reputation as somebody who doesn't get that hung up on who's coaching him. Like,
just not David Blatt.
Right. Just as
anybody
long as
who isn't David Blatt is probably fine.
Right, exactly. I think there's some coaches that he will go to the mattresses more for than others, but at the end of the day, I don't think LeBron necessarily cares that much. I also don't think that he would be above getting someone fired if he really thought it was the right answer. Again, see David Blatt, but also this is the equity that you earn when you're LeBron James. Like you earn the right to do something like that, and you hope that as LeBron, you would exercise it judiciously. But I get a sense that Vogel is respected enough by LeBron that even if LeBron wouldn't fight for him, he would want to avoid a really crappy outcome for Frank, like on a personal level. But also, like you said, LeBron's hands are going to be seen as very bloody in this. Like, even if he's not seen as somebody pushing Vogel out to be the fall guy, because that's clearly Pelinka, LeBron is not going to be seen as kind of incidental in all of this. And as much as I think LeBron can be, pretty secure in appearances and doesn't get hung up on everything, like calculated as LeBron is and image conscious as he is, that I agree with you. That is something he would want to avoid. And I understand that it's a terrible look.
Yeah, I think they all are, to be honest. We can wrap here and we'll get to some of the trade stuff. And I'm sure we'll come back to this depending on the result of Wednesday's game.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants, I think they want to look like they are holding his feet to the fire and holding people accountable around here. I don't think anybody wants to actually let Frank go, both because I think they like him. I think they think it's going to be hard to do better, but also because I think they are very aware of the optics.
Yeah.
And so I think both of those things can be true at once. I don't think they want to let him go, but now they put themselves in a box to where if they have 3 bad games in a row, whether Vogel's doing great coaching under terrible circumstances or not, they have to let him go or they're going to look like they have literally no direction.
Really quick before we go, it is worth noting too, from Frank Vogel's side, he talked up just the efforts of the coaching staff before and after the Utah game a lot. I don't think that was a coincidence.
No, we kind of alluded to that earlier, and I agree with you. I think he has shown the willingness to stick up for himself periodically when he feels it's necessary throughout his tenure as a Lakers coach. For a mild-mannered kind of company guy, he's not afraid to speak up for himself. So this is fascinating. Always want to thank the Lakers for providing excellent content for us. I do feel like the Rambis thing is a little extreme, but if that's the direction they feel like they need to go, I will be here 5 days a week. We'll regroup after the game tonight and see how things are going, whether or not we believe Frank Vogel will be around Thursday or if it will be Kurt Rambis. God, can you imagine? I feel like I'm just being mean to Lakers fans now by even putting this out there.
Or you just like the Travolta gift.
Or just, again, another situation where both can be true. But anyway, and we'll get to the trade stuff over the course of the week because there's a lot to talk about there, but that stuff should hold. We'll Thank you again for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, and subscribe to Locked On Lakers on YouTube. See everybody on Thursday.